So I'll talk a little bit about our conserved lands next. As I mentioned, we have conserved about 12,000 acres in Southern Oregon and 5 counties. Next. Our focus now since 2012 is particularly in Jackson and Josephine County. This map shows our conserved lands in red to scale. We are intending to continue to focus in special areas within this area and have conserve greater corridors of land. Next. I am going to highlight a couple of our fee-owned lands that we own and care for, and this is about Williams Creek Reserve. In the 1990s, there was a study that found that there's only 6 stream reaches in the entire Applegate watershed that convey cold water during drought years. And the Williams Creek Reserve was identified as one of those places. Working with the Williams Creek Watershed Council and funding from the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, this property was conserved in 2003. It's home to beavers and wood ducks and all kinds of wonderful critters. And it's a dynamic system. Every winter, the property completely changes almost. Next. There's new wood jams and growing and contracting cobble beaches. The stream channels braid, and sometimes, frankly, it's a little hard to walk through. The map on the left shows the property. It's a little bit north of the town of Williams and south of that red Provolt store on the Williams Highway. Over the years, we've done a number of things. For instance, the little meadows on the properties used to be full of noxious yellow star thistle, and now this year we find none or just pull a couple. We worked with the water masters to put a gauging station on the property to help monitor upstream use and over allocation of water rights. And we're working soon with the Applegate Partnership to manage the Himalayan blackberry on the property. Next. I'm going to briefly just talk about Robo Preserved, but I ask all of you who have been there, could you please write in your chat why you love Robo Preserved? One of the reasons I love it is during the winter, there's a very large herd of elk that find this property to be a refuge. And here they are. Next. So the map on the left shows the property highlighted in pink. It's near Eagle Point, just upstream from Dodgebridge County Park. It's 352 acres of remnant wild, relatively intact valley floor. It includes 2 miles of riverfront, a couple of miles of intermittent streams, all of which host spawning coho and chinook salmon. It includes 140 acre deep and light floodplain forest, the 2nd largest gallery floodplain forest known, upstream of Galice. It also includes rare agate desert, 40 acres of vernal pool mounded prairie that supports very rare species, as well as a mosaic of oaks and chaparral and meadows. It's a fabulous, fabulous place. Next. And we'll hear a little bit more about Robo Preserve in just a sec. So our conserved lands that are conservation easements include lands owned by private landowners, but also city lands. For instance, the Jacksonville Woodlands. Some time ago, people who lived in Jacksonville decided they wanted to protect the scenic viewshed and woodlands surrounding the town. And fundraised, including Boy Scouts and classrooms and Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, and over time purchased a number of properties. The promise to those folks who donated was putting conservation easements on all 7 of those properties to ensure that the land is always a natural area with public access. This area is the heart of a population of a very, very rare and endangered plant, Gettner's fritillaria. So if you visit in early April, you might get a chance to see the stunning red lily. Next. We also have a similar partnership with the city of Ashland. And it all started in part, Orson Todd Woods and Siskiyou Mountain Park, in part because of our former president, the wonderful and late Mike Utoff. He, with our organization, fundraised and led the charge to protect the adjacent Siskiyou Mountain Park, which was owned by a logging company. And today there's almost 300 acres of natural areas and trails. And it's a wonderful place to visit. We like to bring young people out there. For over 10 years, we've been running a program called Loving the Land, where we bring local 4th and 5th graders to the land to explore, to know their natural neighbors, and to learn about natural science. Last year, over 280 students from Ashland and Talon and Phoenix and Medford went through our Loving the Land. This year, unfortunately, it was canceled, but we look forward to holding it again next year. We also have a great partnership with the John Muir Middle School. They have adopted Orson Todd Woods, so that means at least 4 times a year they come out to the woods, working with park staff and do stewardship activities like chipping the trails and cutting back blackberry. And our staff always leads a natural science lesson for them. And that's some of the students, a little muddy, working on a very rainy day on the lower right. Next. So I am a rare plant botanist by training, and so I guess I throw rare plant pictures in all my presentations, but I wanted to mention that Southwest Oregon, our subregion within the greater California floristic province, which includes most of California, has more rare and endemic plant species that grow nowhere else per area than any of the other diverse subregions of California. And many of these species only grow on non-federal lands. So we have had the opportunity to protect habitat for 3 endangered species, as well as many beautiful, beautiful rare plants of our region. And we hope to protect more. Next. Our conserved lands also include working lands, including 68 acres of cropland and over 2,000 acres of grazing land, including portions of C2 Ranch, which is the 2nd biggest ranch in Jackson County. These lands also protect natural habitats. Next. Our conserved lands also include working forests, properties with sustainable harvest for logs and trees, but they also manage the properties for other values like wildlife. For instance, Pacific fishers, our wonderful little carnivore. They need snags, dead trees, they need brush fields, and they also need mistletoe brooms to thrive in our area. Next. I just wanted to briefly talk about annual monitoring. We monitor every year, every one of our conserved properties. But in particular, I wanted to talk about conservation easement monitoring. Once a year, we visit landowners and ideally walk the land with them. And we have a couple goals. One is to strengthen our relationships with these landowners, who, by the way, some of them are the most extraordinary people I've ever met, and some of them are in this meeting right now. Thank you for joining us. To ensure that the terms of the conservation easement are upheld, and to serve as an ally with management challenges. We also, when needed, enforce the conservation easement and work with landowners if there are violations of the conservation easement. We visit every single year. Next. We like to think we practice proactive stewardship. by maintaining relationships with these landowners. In some cases that involves identifying interesting pictures of plants or frogs that they send us that either our staff can answer or our friends, our talented friends and volunteers can answer. Sometimes we're lucky and get an AmeriCorps crew and can bring young volunteers to help with, say, weed pulling or fence removal. Next. The part of the power of a conservation easement is called the notice and approval process. We work with landowners who are doing management, say stream restoration or ecological thinning of their forest. We review and approve or approve with modifications these management plans. We also try to work closely with landowners when they're planning on selling their property. We meet with real estate agents and potential owners to try to find a good match. Conservation easements are not for everyone. They are for very special people who recognize both the value of conserving lands and working with the land trust. Next. Okay, we're back to Red River Preserve again. So this is a picture from the deep and bright and gorgeous floodplain forest. Look at those big cottonwood trees, which provide wonderful habitat for great horned owls and flying squirrels. Here is a biologist actually conducting a point count survey. Every year we contract with a bird biologist to do bird point counts to contribute to local knowledge about our birds and also regional knowledge. Next. The floodplain forest in the spring in places is also full of flowers. We're working on having a light trail that actually goes by this spot. But it's really quite lovely. Next. So our main goal with conserving the Red River Preserve is conservation and habitat enhancement and restoration, but secondary goals including bringing the public out. Last year we held 6 free community hikes to the property and also worked with students on service learning and science lessons. We worked with 131 students. Notice this lovely person in the upper right-hand corner. That is our new education program manager, Tara, who we'll hear from a little bit later, and she'll share some future endeavors in education on this property. Next. Part of our mission in terms of caring for Red River Preserve and other properties is to care for them. And with the help of a lot of volunteers, we have been caring for the preserve. Last year, 152 volunteers volunteered 772 hours of their time, including large and small work parties, doing all kinds of activities like collecting seeds and removing fences. We also worked with 3 Southern Oregon University students as part of their capstone for them to graduate from the outdoor education program. They led raft trips to the 16-acre island, and then with other student volunteers helped us remove scotch broom. Next. The preserve hosts some rare species. We monitored rare species, including large flowered woolly meadowfoam, which is an endangered species that likes vernal pools. With funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we also this fall spread seeds to increase populations and to help with species recovery. Next. Another side goal of conserving Red River Preserve is to contribute to regional knowledge and research. Notice the lovely long-term volunteer, Judith Maxwell. She volunteers more than full-time with the Oregon Bee Atlas. She just helped put up some bee survey materials. In the state of Oregon, the Oregon Bee Atlas is embarking on a pilot research project to look at 5 river basins. And in the Rogue Basin, the Rogue River Preserve is the site where we hopefully will learn more about the biodiversity of the bees on the property and maybe perhaps answer some research questions. Klamath Bird Observatory is a long-term partner that we really enjoy working with. And they actually secured funding for starting this fall to find out about where do Lewis's woodpeckers go. This wonderful and declining woodpecker used to be common in Jackson County. It used to breed in Jackson County. And now you find it only in a few places, including the preserve, but they disappear during the breeding season. Where do they go? Part of this project includes putting up a Modus wildlife tracking station, which records animals that are birds or bats or small insects that fly by 24 hours a day when those critters have very small radio transmitters placed on them. Modus is kind of a new trend in tracking migratory species, and there's a gap in the Modus stations in Western North America between the Arctic and South America. And so the Modus station will help with those endeavors. We also are working with a wonderful nonprofit called Understory Initiative. They will be doing pilot pollinator habitat work at Rogue River Preserve. One of the big challenges in our region is managing non-native annual grasses, as well as perennial non-native pasture grasses. And they will be working on some experiments to see if they can reduce those non-native grasses and increase what the pollinators need, which include bunch grasses and flowering plants like this beautiful native clover. By the way, please email me if you would like to help with collecting seeds. You might need a few more hands to collect seeds from the preserve this summer. And that concludes my presentation. I thank you all so much for helping us keep this place beautiful. Really appreciate it. Thank you.